The stars exploded in bright flashes as Admiral Jack Morrison watched from the command deck of the USS Liberty. Enemy ships filled the dark space around Kepler 442, their black hulls moving like deadly shadows. The Void Swarm had come in huge, numbers more than anyone had seen before. "All ships move to attack formation," Morrison said into his radio. His voice stayed calm even as his heart beat fast. Behind him, Captain Ben Phillips worked at his station, sending orders to the human fleet. "The Zephyrians are falling back," Phillips said. His fingers moved quickly over the controls. Their crystal ships took heavy damage. Morrison nodded. The crystal people were good fighters, but their ships were not as strong as human ones. "Tell them to get behind our line. We will cover them." Dr. Lisa Carter ran onto the command deck. Her lab coat was dirty and her hair was messy. She had been working for 3 days without sleep. "Admiral, I think I found something important about the swarm ships." "What is it?" Morrison asked, still, watching the battle on the big screen. "They learn from our attacks. Each time we hit them, they change their shields to stop the same attack from working again. But they take time to adapt, about 30 seconds. Morrison smiled for the first time in days. "Phillips, did you hear that?" "Yes, sir. I can work with 30 seconds. The battle was going badly. The Void Swarm ships looked like giant black insects made of metal. They moved in perfect groups, never making mistakes. When human ships fired at them, the swarm ships would glow with dark energy and absorb the hits. Then they would fire back with weapons that could cut through any shield. "The Nereidans are asking for help," said Commander Kate Williams from her station. She was in charge of talking to their allies. "Their water ships are not doing well in space combat. Send the 3rd Squadron to help them," Morrison ordered. He hated splitting his forces, but the fish people were important allies. Their ships were built for underwater fighting, not space battles. On the screen, Morrison watched human ships move to protect the retreating Nereidan fleet. The water people's ships looked like giant submarines with fins and tentacles. They were beautiful but not very useful in this fight. "What about the Luminari?" Morrison asked. Williams checked her screen. "They say they are fighting on the other side of the planet. I cannot see them from here." The energy beings were always hard to track. Their ships were made of pure light and could move very fast, but they did not fight like humans. They preferred to attack from far away. Dr. Carter was still working on her portable computer. "Admiral, I have a plan. If we can hit the swarm ships. With different types of weapons every 30 seconds, they cannot adapt fast enough." Morrison looked at Phillips. "Can we do that?" "Maybe, but we need perfect timing, and we need all our ships to work together. Send the plan to all human ships. Tell them to get ready for Operation Thunder." The next hour was the longest of Morrison's life. Human ships moved in careful patterns, hitting the swarm vessels with lasers for 30 seconds, then switching to missiles, then to plasma cannons. The swarm ships tried to adapt but could not keep up. Slowly, the black enemy ships began to break apart. Their perfect formations started to fall apart as human tactics confused their adaptive systems. "It's working," Dr. Carter shouted. They cannot handle rapid changes in attack patterns, but the battle was far from over. The swarm had sent thousands of ships. For every one that humans destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. "Admiral," Phillips said quietly, "we are running low on ammunition, and our shields are getting weak." Morrison knew they needed help. The Zephyrians were hiding behind the human fleet. The Nereidans had moved their ships far from the fighting, and the Luminari were nowhere to be seen. "All human ships, listen to me," Morrison said over the radio. "We are the only thing standing between the swarm and the Crystal People's home world. Millions of innocent beings live on that planet. We will not let them down." The human fleet fought harder. Ship after ship took damage but kept fighting. When the USS Brooklyn lost its main guns, it used itself as a weapon and crashed into a swarm ship. When the USS Denver's shields failed, it kept firing until the very end. Dr. Carter worked frantically at her computer. "I'm trying to find a weakness in their command ship, that big one in the center." Morrison saw it. The command ship was 10 times larger than the others, with thousands of smaller ships flying around it like angry bees. If we can destroy their leader, the others might retreat, Carter said. That ship is too well protected, Phillips said. We would need to get through all those smaller ships first. Morrison made a decision that would save millions of lives. All ships target the command vessel. Everything we have left. The human fleet turned as one and charged toward the massive enemy ship. Void swarm fighters swarmed around them, but the humans pushed forward. Ship after ship was destroyed, but they kept going. When they got close enough, every human ship fired at the same time. Thousands of weapons hit the command ship from all directions. Its dark shields flickered and went out. The explosion lit up space like a new star. The swarm command ship broke apart, and immediately all the other enemy ships stopped fighting. They sat still in space for a moment, then slowly flew away. The battle was over. The Crystal People's world was saved. But as Morrison looked at his fleet, he felt worried. Half of his ships were damaged or destroyed. Thousands of human sailors were dead or hurt. And through it all, their allies had done very little to help. Commander Williams came to his side. Admiral, I'm getting some strange reports from our intelligence teams. What kind of reports? The swarm ships had information they shouldn't have had. They knew exactly where our supply ships would be. They knew our patrol routes. They knew things that only our allies should know. Morrison felt cold inside. Are you saying someone gave them information? I don't know, sir. But I think we need to be more careful about who we trust. As the human fleet began rescue operations, Morrison wondered if Williams was right. For 200 years, humanity had trusted their alien allies completely. But today, when it mattered most, only humans had fought to save the Crystal People's world. Maybe it was time to start asking some hard questions about their so-called friends. 3 months after the Battle of Kepler 442, Admiral Morrison stood in the Federation Council chambers on the space station New Geneva. The room was built to make aliens feel comfortable, with strange lights and different types of air for each species. Morrison wore his dress uniform but felt very uncomfortable. The human fleet performed well at Kepler, said High Counselor Zeth Ka, a tall crystal being whose body looked like living diamond. But we are concerned about your heavy losses. Morrison kept his face calm. We saved your homeworld. The cost was worth it. Of course, said Counselor Murtide, speaking through a water tank that let the fish person breathe. But perhaps humans are too eager to fight, too willing to sacrifice themselves. The light being Counselor Lux Prime flickered in the air like a bright cloud. The Federation values all life equally. Throwing away human ships and lives is not the answer. Morrison wanted to say many things, but he stayed quiet. These aliens had barely helped in the battle, but now they wanted to tell humans how to fight. We have new intelligence about void swarm movements, Morrison said instead. Commander Williams has the details. Williams stepped forward with her datapad. She had spent weeks preparing this report. The swarm is moving toward the Rigel system. They have at least 5,000 ships. We need to act fast. The alien counselors looked at each other in ways that made Morrison nervous. Crystal beings touched their faces, fish people moved their fins, and light beings grew dimmer. How certain is this intelligence? Asked Zeth Ka. Very certain. Our scouts confirmed it yesterday. Interesting, said Murtide. Our own scouts saw nothing. Williams frowned. That's impossible. The swarm fleet is huge. You cannot miss 5,000 ships. Perhaps human sensors are not working correctly, suggested Lux Prime. Morrison felt anger rising in his chest. Our sensors work fine. We found the swarm fleet while your scouts missed it completely. There is no need for anger, said Zeth Ka. We will send our own ships to check. If the humans are right, we will act. The meeting ended with polite words, but Morrison felt something was very wrong. He and Williams walked back to their shuttle in silence. They're lying, Williams said, when they were alone. I can feel it. Careful, Morrison said. These are our allies. Are they? Admiral, I've been looking at the intelligence reports from the last 6 months. Every time we share information with the Federation, somehow the swarm knows about our plans. Every time we plan a surprise attack, they're waiting for us. Morrison stopped walking. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe someone is telling the swarm about our movements, and maybe that someone is supposed to be our friend. 2 weeks later, the swarm attacked Rigel just as Williams had predicted. Morrison led the human fleet into battle, along with ships from all the allied species. On paper, they had enough firepower to stop the enemy. On paper. Colonel Amy Davis was leading Marines on the surface of Rigel Prime when the real battle began. Her soldiers were dug into defensive positions around the main city. Above them, space filled with the light of weapons fire. All stations, this is Admiral Morrison. Enemy contact confirmed. Engaging now. Davis watched through her binoculars as thousands of ships fought in the dark sky. Human vessels moved in tight formations, their weapons lighting up the night. She could see the crystal ships of the Zephyrians, the submarine-like vessels of the Nereidans, and the bright energy forms of the Luminari ships. The battle seemed to be going well. Human tactics were working, and the swarm was taking heavy losses. Davis began to think they might win easily. Then everything went wrong. "Admiral, the Zephyrian fleet is reporting critical system failures," Captain Phillips said over the radio. "They're pulling back." Morrison watched in shock as the crystal ship suddenly stopped fighting and moved away from the battle. What kind of failures? "They say their main computers crashed. All ships at the same time." That was impossible. Zephyrian computers were the most advanced in the galaxy. They did not just crash for no reason. "What about the Nereidans?" "Same thing, sir. They say their navigation system stopped working. They cannot fight without them." Davis heard the radio chatter from her position on the ground. She watched the alien ships moving away from the battle, leaving only the human fleet to fight alone. "This is impossible," she said to Sergeant Tony Garcia, her second in command. "All three species having problems at the same time?" Garcia looked up at the sky through his helmet scanner. "Ma'am, it looks like the Luminari are having communication problems too. They cannot coordinate with our fleet." In space, Morrison realized he had been betrayed. The moment his human forces were fully committed to battle, all his allies had found excuses to retreat. Now the human fleet faced the entire swarm armada alone. All ships fighting retreat. Get our people out of there. But it was too late. The swarm had planned for this. As soon as the alien allies left, thousands more enemy ships appeared. They had been hiding behind the planet, waiting for the humans to be alone. On the ground, Davis watched swarm landing ships coming down like deadly rain. Her Marines fought bravely, but they were outnumbered 100-1. "Fall back to the city," she shouted. "Fighting retreat." Her soldiers ran from position to position, trying to slow down the enemy advance. Sergeant Garcia's squad held a bridge for 2 hours against impossible odds. When they finally retreated, only Garcia was still alive. In space, the human Third Fleet was completely destroyed. Admiral Morrison managed to save about half of his ships, but the cost was terrible. Thousands of human sailors died while their supposed allies watched from safe distances. Dr. Ryan Brooks was working in his laboratory when the retreat order came. He was one of Earth's best scientists, trying to build new weapons to fight the swarm. When he heard about the battle, he felt sick. "They let us fight alone," he said to his assistant. "Our allies abandoned us." "Maybe their equipment really did fail," the assistant said. Brooks shook his head. "The probability of all three species having technical problems at the exact same moment is essentially zero. This was planned." Agent Nina Parker had been working undercover in Zephyrian space for 6 months. She looked like a crystal being thanks to advanced human technology. What she had learned made her blood cold. The aliens had been meeting in secret. They had their own plans for dealing with the Void Swarm, plans that did not include humanity. In fact, their plans required humanity to be removed from the equation. Parker sent an encrypted message to Commander Williams. "The Allies are not allies. They plan to sacrifice us. Get ready for betrayal." When Morrison returned to Federation space, he demanded answers from the Council. The aliens gave him smooth words and promises of investigations, but no real explanations. "Technical failures happen," said Zethka. "We are sorry for the timing." The timing was perfect for the swarm. Morrison said angrily, almost like they knew you would not be there to help. Admiral Morrison, said Myrtide, perhaps you are upset because of your losses. We understand. But accusing your allies of betrayal is not helpful. Morrison left the council chambers knowing that Williams had been right. Their allies were planning something terrible. But he did not know how terrible until he received Parker's final message. The Void Swarm was not just a random enemy. The aliens had been talking to them for months. They had made a deal: give us the humans, and leave our worlds alone. Humanity was about to be sold to their worst enemy by the people they had trusted most. Williams met Morrison in his quarters that night. She carried a data pad with enough evidence to prove the conspiracy. Sir, we need to warn Earth immediately. The Federation is going to betray us. Morrison looked at the evidence and felt his world fall apart. 200 years of alliance, friendship, and cooperation had been a lie. The aliens had always planned to sacrifice humanity when the time came. Send a message to President Thompson, he said quietly. Tell her to prepare for war, not with the swarm, but with everyone else. Outside the window, alien ships moved through space like they owned it. But soon, Morrison thought, they would learn what happened when you betrayed humanity. President Carol Thompson sat in the emergency bunker deep under the Rocky Mountains. Red lights flashed on every screen around her. Earth was under attack, but not by the Void Swarm. Their own allies had turned against them. Madam President, said General Steve Martinez, his voice tight with anger, the Zephyrians just destroyed the Mars shipyards. The Nereidans are attacking our colonies in the Alpha Centauri system. And the Luminari have surrounded Earth with an energy field. Thompson looked at the tactical display. Red dots showed enemy. Ships everywhere humans lived. Her people were being attacked by the very aliens they had fought beside for 200 years. What about Admiral Morrison? He's fighting a running battle near Jupiter. Half his fleet is gone, but he's still fighting. The betrayal had come without warning. At exactly the same moment across human space, Federation forces had opened fire on their former allies. Ships that had fought together against the Void Swarm now shot at each other with deadly intent. Captain Tony Garcia was running for his life on the colony world New Boston. Crystal beings in battle armor were hunting human civilians through the streets. Garcia had been visiting his sister when the attack began. Now he was trying to get her family to the evacuation ships. Uncle Tony, why are the Crystal people shooting? At us? Asked his 7-year-old nephew Billy. Garcia did not know how to answer. How do you explain betrayal to a child? They're not our friends anymore, Billy. We have to get to the ships. Behind them, Zephyrian soldiers moved through the city like deadly robots. Their crystal bodies could stop bullets, and their weapons could cut through walls. They were not trying to capture humans. They were trying to kill them all. There, Garcia pointed to a landing pad where human ships were still taking off. Run! They ran through burning streets while buildings exploded around them. Garcia's sister carried her baby while her husband helped Billy keep up. Other human families were running too, all trying to reach safety that might not exist. A crystal soldier appeared at the end of the street. Its weapon glowed as it prepared to fire. Garcia threw himself in front of his family just as Chief Engineer Frank Johnson's experimental weapon hit the alien from behind. This way, Johnson shouted. He was leading a group of human engineers who had refused to surrender. I have a ship. Dr. Lisa Carter was in her laboratory on the research station when the attack began. She had been working on new ways to fight the Void Swarm. Now she was watching her life's work burn. Dr. Carter, said her assistant, the Nereidans are boarding the station. They're killing everyone they find. Carter looked at her computer files. Years of research into alien biology and technology, information that could help humanity survive. She could not let it fall into enemy hands. Download everything to the portable drives, she said. We're leaving. Where can we go? They're attacking everywhere. Carter thought of Admiral Morrison's words from the battle briefings. When everything goes wrong, you fight with what you have and never give up. We go to Earth. We help our people fight back. The evacuation was a nightmare. Human ships trying to escape were shot down by aliens, They had once called friends. Families were separated. Children lost their parents. Parents watched their children die. But something else was happening too. Humans were not just running away. They were fighting back in ways that surprised their attackers. Major Julie Adams had been training resistance fighters in secret for months. Commander Williams' intelligence reports had convinced a few military leaders to prepare for the worst. When the betrayal came, Adams was ready. "All resistance cells, this is Viper Command," she said over encrypted radio. "Execute Plan Scorpion. Make them pay for every inch." Across human space, hidden weapons caches were opened. Civilians who had been secretly trained for guerrilla warfare picked up guns. Government buildings that the aliens thought they had captured turned into death traps. On the colony world New Texas, a Narration occupation force found that every human building was booby-trapped. When they tried to use the captured spaceport, it exploded. When they tried to access the computer systems, viruses destroyed their equipment. The luminary discovered that humans had been secretly hardening their technology against energy attacks. Their light-based weapons, which should have shut down all human systems, only worked half the time. President Thompson received a message from High Counselor Zeth Ka on her emergency communications system. The crystal being appeared on her screen like a judge pronouncing sentence. "President Thompson, the Galactic Survival Pact offers humanity one chance for survival. Surrender unconditionally within 24 hours, and we will arrange for your species to be relocated to a safe part of the galaxy." "Relocated where?" Thompson asked, though she already knew the answer. "The Void Swarm has agreed to accept humanity in exchange for ending their attacks on the rest of the galaxy. You will be given suitable living space in their territory." Thompson laughed, though there was no humor in it. "You mean you're going to feed us to our enemies to save yourselves?" "We are offering survival. The alternative is extinction." Thompson looked around the bunker at her advisors and generals. They all knew what choice she would make, what choice any human leader would make. "I have a message for you and your survival. Pact," she said. "Humanity rejects your offer. We will never surrender. We will never accept slavery. And we will never forgive this betrayal." "Then you choose extinction." "No," Thompson said firmly. "We choose to fight. And let me tell you something about humans that you never understood in 200 years of alliance. When you corner us, when you betray us, when you try to destroy us, we don't just fight back. We become something you never expected." She cut the transmission and turned to her staff. "Send this message to every human ship, every human colony, every human soldier in the galaxy." The message went out on all frequencies, in clear language that everyone could understand. "To all humans, everywhere, our allies have betrayed us. They want to hand us over to the Void Swarm to save themselves. They think we will surrender because we are outnumbered and outgunned. They are wrong. We stand alone now, but we have always been strongest when we stand alone. Show them what humans do when cornered. Show them what humans do when betrayed. We stand alone, and that is enough." Admiral Morrison received the message while fighting near Europa. His fleet was down to 30 ships, surrounded by hundreds of alien vessels. By all military logic, he should surrender. Instead, he ordered his ships to attack. The USS Liberty led the charge straight into the enemy formation. Human ships that were damaged beyond hope became weapons themselves, ramming into alien vessels. Crews that should have been running for escape pods instead kept fighting until their ships broke apart. Morrison's tactical officer, Lieutenant Dan Cooper, was barely 25 years old. But he understood something about warfare that the aliens had missed. "Admiral," he said, "their formations are designed to fight the Void Swarm. They're not ready for desperate humans who don't care about dying." Morrison smiled as he watched alien ships scatter before his suicidal charge. "Then let's show them how humans fight when they have nothing left to lose." The Battle of Europa lasted 6 hours. When it was over, Morrison had only 8 ships left. But the alien fleet that had tried to destroy him was completely gone. Across human space, similar battles were being fought. Humans who should have been defeated were winning through pure determination and fury. The aliens had superior technology and numbers, but they were not prepared for an enemy that simply refused to give up. Chief Engineer Johnson appeared on Thompson's emergency screen from his hidden laboratory. Behind him, she could see strange machines that looked like nothing she had ever seen before. "Madam President, I have something that might help. I've been working with captured void swarm technology. I think I understand how their adaptive systems work. Can you build weapons? Better than weapons. I can build ships that learn and adapt like the swarm does. Ships that get stronger every time they fight." Thompson felt hope for the first time since the betrayal began. "How long do you need? Give me 6 months and all the resources you can spare. I'll give you a fleet that will make our former allies regret ever crossing humanity." As night fell on Earth, Thompson stood in the bunker's observation deck and looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, aliens who had once been friends were hunting her people. They thought they had won by striking first and hard. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Humanity stood alone now. But alone they would be stronger than they had ever been before. Admiral Morrison's ship drifted through the dark space between stars. The USS Liberty was barely holding together after months of running battles against the alien pact. Half his crew was wounded, and they were almost out of supplies. But Morrison had made a decision that would change everything. "Admiral," said Commander Eric Lewis, who had taken over after Captain Phillips died defending the Mars colonies. "The Void Swarm ships are responding to our message." Morrison watched the main screen as massive black ships approached from all directions. These were the same creatures that had been humanity's enemy for decades. Now he was asking them for help against former allies. "Open a channel," Morrison said. The screen flickered, and something appeared that no human had ever seen before. Instead of a monster or machine, the image showed a being that looked almost like a tall, thin person covered in what seemed like living shadow. "I am Speaker Void, born of dying stars," the creature said in perfect English. "You are Admiral Morrison, of the species called human. How do you know our language? We have been watching you for a long time, Admiral. Your species interests us greatly." Dr. Helen Murphy, who had joined Morrison's fleet after escaping from the research station, stepped forward. She had spent years studying alien psychology and was the only person qualified to speak for humanity in this moment. "Why do you attack our galaxy?" she asked. The Void Swarm speaker made a sound that might have been laughter. "Attack? Child of Earth, we do not attack, we test." Morrison felt confused. "Test for what? We come from a galaxy far from yours. Our home was destroyed by something we call the Great Devourer. It consumes everything. Planets, stars, life itself. We are all that remains of 1,000 different species. We came here looking for allies strong enough to help us fight it." "Doctor?" Murphy's eyes widened. "The battles, the destruction. You were testing us?" "Every species faces the same test when we arrive. We push them to their limits to see what they are made of. Most choose survival over honor. They surrender. They run. They betray their own kind to save themselves." Morrison thought of the Zephyrians, Nereidans, and Luminari, like our former allies did. "Exactly. Those species failed our test long ago. They chose to live on their knees rather than die on their feet. We offered them the same deal we offered your betrayers. Give us the strongest species in your galaxy, and we will leave you alone." "And now they're trying to give you humanity," Morrison said. "Yes. But humanity has done something no other species in this galaxy has ever done. You were betrayed by everyone you trusted, attacked by overwhelming force and offered an easy path to survival. Instead of surrendering, you chose to fight alone against impossible odds." The speaker leaned forward on the screen. "Admiral Morrison, humanity has passed our test. We offer you alliance." Morrison felt the weight of his species' survival on his shoulders. "What kind of alliance?" "We will share our technology with you, our knowledge of how to fight the Great Devourer. In return, when we leave this galaxy to face our ancient enemy, humanity will come with us as our battle partners." "And our former allies?" "They made their choice when they betrayed you. Their fate is no longer our concern." While Morrison negotiated with the Void Swarm, Captain Sam Robinson was leading a very different kind of fight. His job was to rescue humans from worlds occupied by the alien pact. It was dangerous work that usually ended in death, but Robinson had rescued over 10,000 people. "There," said his pilot, pointing to a scanner reading. "3 transport ships trying to escape New California. Pact fighters are chasing them." Robinson's ship, the USS Underground, was built for stealth and speed. It dropped out of hyperspace, right between the civilian ships and their attackers. "This is Captain Robinson. All civilian ships follow my lead. Pact fighters. You have 10 seconds to leave or be destroyed." The crystal ships did not retreat. They fired their weapons at the human vessels, expecting easy victories. They were very wrong. Robinson's ship had been upgraded with new technology that Chief Engineer Johnson had developed. Instead of normal shields, it had adaptive armor that learned from each attack and became stronger. The crystal weapons that should have destroyed the Underground barely scratched its hull. "Return fire," Robinson ordered. The Underground's weapons were different too. They fired bullets that changed their properties in flight, shifting from explosive to armor-piercing to electromagnetic, depending on what the target's defenses looked like. The packed ships had never seen anything like it. 3 minutes later, all the enemy fighters were destroyed. The civilian ships were safe. "How did we do that?" asked Robinson's gunner. "Mr. Johnson's new toys," Robinson said with a smile. "Turns out when you combine human engineering with void swarm technology, you get some very interesting results." Back on Earth, President Thompson was meeting with Chief Engineer Johnson in his underground laboratory. The place looked like something from a science fiction movie, full of machines that seemed to be alive and computers that glowed with strange energy. "Show me what you've built," Thompson said. Johnson led her to a huge window that looked out into an underground cavern. Inside, the cavern was something that took Thompson's breath away. It was a spaceship, but unlike any human vessel ever built. The hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Weapons that looked like they were grown rather than built extended from its sides, and the whole ship pulsed with a faint energy that made Thompson's skin tingle. "I call it the USS Evolution," Johnson said proudly. "It's built using void swarm biotechnology combined with human engineering principles. The ship literally learns from battle and becomes stronger." "How much stronger?" "Every time it fights, it adapts. Every time an enemy weapon hits it, the armor learns to resist that weapon better. Every time it fires, its weapons become more accurate and more powerful. After a few battles, it will be practically unstoppable." Thompson stared at the ship. "How many can you build?" "With the resources Admiral Morrison is bringing back from Void Swarm space, I can build a whole fleet." Lieutenant Dan Cooper was having the time of his life. The young officer had been given command of a new experimental squadron fighting in the Titan system. His ships were the first to use Johnson's adaptive technology in real combat. "All right, people," Cooper said to his pilots over the radio. "Remember, these ships learn from experience. The more we fight, the better they get. Let's give them a good education." The enemy was a combined packed fleet trying to capture the mining stations around Saturn. They had overwhelming numbers and firepower. On paper, Cooper's small squadron should have been destroyed in minutes. Instead, something amazing happened. Cooper's ships fought like they were alive. When Zephyrian crystal weapons hit their hulls, the armor adapted to resist crystal energy. When Nerite and water-based weapons tried to short out their electronics, the ships grew new circuits that were waterproof. When luminary light attacks tried to blind their sensors, the ships developed new ways of seeing, and the human crews learned too. Cooper watched his pilots develop new tactics in real time, using their ship's adaptive abilities to maximum advantage. "Cooper to all ships," he said, as the enemy formation began to break apart. "Initiate Wolfpack formation. Let's show them what happens when humans and void swarm technology work together." The battle became a hunt. Cooper's adaptive ships chased down fleeing enemy vessels like wolves pursuing prey. Every alien ship they destroyed taught them something new about how to fight. When the battle was over, Cooper's squadron had not lost a single ship. The enemy fleet was completely destroyed. "Command, this is Cooper," he reported to Admiral Foster, who was coordinating human resistance from a hidden base. "Mission accomplished. Enemy fleet eliminated. And I think our ships just figured out how to fire through shields." Admiral Susan Foster smiled as she listened to the report. She had been Morrison's second in command before he left for Void Swarm Space. Now she was building the new human military that would take revenge on their betrayers. Well done, Lieutenant. Return to base. We have more enemies to test your new abilities on. Foster looked at the tactical display showing human space. Red zones marked areas under pact control, but those zones were getting smaller every day. Wherever humans fought with their new adaptive technology, they won. Major Julie Adams reported in from the guerrilla war on occupied worlds. Admiral, Pact occupation forces are starting to retreat from outer colonies. They can't handle the resistance anymore. Dr. Michelle Taylor, who was leading the Joint Human Void Swarm Technology Program, had even better news. Admiral, we've made a breakthrough. The Void Swarm has shared their faster-than-light travel technology with us. We can now move ships across the galaxy in days instead of months. Foster nodded with satisfaction. Everything was coming together. The aliens had betrayed humanity thinking they were removing a threat. Instead, they had forced humans to become something far more dangerous than they had ever been before. Prepare for Phase 2 of the liberation, she ordered. It's time to show our former allies what we've learned about warfare. The war was about to change, and the alien pact was about to discover that betraying humanity had been the worst mistake they could possibly have made. 18 months after the Great Betrayal, Admiral Susan Foster stood on the bridge of the USS Independence, humanity's new flagship. The ship was beautiful and terrifying, with hull that seemed alive and weapons that had learned to think for themselves. Through the main viewport, she could see the Alpha Centauri system where the final battle was about to begin. All fleet commanders report status, Foster said into her communication device. First battle group ready, reported General Paul Anderson from his command ship. 200 vessels, all equipped with adaptive technology. Second battle group standing by, said Captain Tony Garcia, who had been promoted after his heroic rescue work. 150 ships with full Void Swarm modifications. Third battle group in position, said Dr. Michelle Taylor, who now commanded the Experimental Technology Division. 100 ships with the latest adaptive weapons. Foster smiled. The human fleet that had assembled at Alpha Centauri was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Every ship could learn from battle and become stronger. Every weapon adapted to overcome enemy defenses. Every crew had been trained by the best military minds of two species. Enemy fleet detected, said Lieutenant Dan Cooper from his sensor station. All three packed species are here. Over 2,000 ships. Foster looked at the tactical display. The Alien Survival Pact had gathered their entire remaining fleet for this battle. Crystal ships from the Zephyrians, submarine-like vessels from the Nereidans, and energy forms from the Luminari filled space around the human colonies. They're trying to make a final stand, Foster said to her staff. They know we've been winning everywhere else. It was true. For the past year, human forces had been systematically liberating every occupied world. The adaptive technology had made them nearly unstoppable. Each battle taught their ships new tricks, and each victory made them stronger. Admiral, said Cooper, we're receiving a transmission from the enemy flagship. Put it on screen. High Counselor Zethka appeared on the main viewer. The crystal being looked very different from their last meeting. Cracks showed in his diamond-like skin, and his light was much dimmer. Admiral Foster, the Galactic Survival Pact requests terms for surrender. Foster felt surprised. She had expected the aliens to fight to the end. What kind of terms? We acknowledge that our betrayal of humanity was wrong. We are prepared to return all occupied human worlds and pay reparations for the damage we have caused. And in return, we ask only that you allow our species to continue existing. We will withdraw to our home systems and never interfere with human affairs again. Foster looked around her bridge at the human officers who had survived the betrayal and fought their way back to victory. She thought of all the humans who had died when their allies turned on them. She thought of the children who had lost their parents and the families torn apart by alien treachery. Counselor Zethka, 2 years ago, you offered humanity a choice: surrender or extinction. Today, humanity offers you the same choice: But with one important difference. What difference? When you betrayed us, you said it was necessary for survival. When we defeat you, it will be justice. Foster cut the transmission and turned to her fleet commanders. All ships, engage the enemy. Show them what humans have learned about warfare. The Battle of Alpha Centauri was not really a battle. It was a demonstration of how far humanity had evolved in 18 months of desperate fighting. Human ships moved through space like living creatures, flowing around enemy formations and striking from unexpected angles. When alien weapons hit them, their hulls adapted and became immune to those attacks. When they fired back, their weapons learned to overcome any defense. Captain Garcia led a squadron of fast attack ships against the Narration fleet. The Fish People's submarines were designed for underwater combat and were slow in space. Garcia's ships surrounded them like sharks attacking whales. All ships use adaptive torpedoes, Garcia ordered. Let's see how they handle weapons that change course in flight. The torpedoes left Garcia's ships and immediately began shifting their properties. Some became heat-seeking, others followed energy signatures, and still others tracked movement patterns. The Narration ships tried to deploy countermeasures, but the torpedoes simply adapted to overcome them. General Anderson was fighting the Zephyrian crystal ships with his heavy battle cruisers. The crystal beings had always relied on their superior armor and weapons, but Anderson's ships had learned to fight them over months of battle. Target their crystal matrices, Anderson commanded. Use resonance weapons. The human ships fired special sonic weapons that had been developed specifically to fight crystal beings. The weapons created vibrations that shattered the aliens' diamond-like hulls from the inside. Ships that had seemed invulnerable began breaking apart. Dr. Taylor's experimental ships engaged the luminary energy beings in the strangest part of the battle. Her vessels had been modified to fight creatures made of pure light, using weapons that absorbed energy instead of projecting it. Deploy energy drains, Taylor ordered. Let's see how bright they shine when we steal their power. The Luminari discovered that their light-based attacks were being absorbed by human ships and converted into power for human weapons. The more they attacked, the stronger the humans became. Foster watched the battle from the Independence's bridge with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. The aliens who had once been humanity's allies were being completely destroyed, but she took no joy in it. "Admiral," said Cooper, "the enemy fleet is breaking apart. Most ships are trying to retreat." "Let them go," Foster said quietly. "They've learned their lesson." When the battle was over, less than 100 alien ships remained, out of the 2,000 that had started the fight. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel. High Counselor Zeth Ka appeared on screen again, his image flickering as his damaged ship tried to maintain communication. "Admiral Foster, we surrender unconditionally." "What are your terms?" Foster thought carefully before answering. The easy thing would be to destroy them all, to take revenge for every human who had died because of their betrayal. But that was not what humanity should become. "Here are humanity's terms," she said. "All pack species will withdraw to their home systems immediately. You will have no contact with human space without permission. You will pay reparations to the families of humans killed during your betrayal. And you will remember that you chose this fate when you decided to betray us. And if we agree to these terms, then you live. But as neighbors, not as friends. Humanity is done trusting species that would sell us to our enemies." 6 months later, President Carroll Thompson stood in the newly built council chamber on Earth. But this was not a Federation Council. This was the governing body of the human colonial sphere, a new nation that included all human worlds, plus several systems that had asked to join them. "The transformation is complete," Thompson announced to the assembled representatives. "Humanity now controls 47 star systems, defended by the most advanced fleet in the galaxy." Admiral Morrison, who had returned from Void Swarm space with new knowledge and technology, stood to address the council. "The Void Swarm has departed for their home galaxy to fight the Great Devourer. They left behind communication beacons and promised to return when that war is won. If they succeed, humanity will have allies who fight for honor instead of convenience." Chief Engineer Johnson, now head of the Human Technology Development Division, presented his latest achievements. Our adaptive ship technology is advancing every day. We now have vessels that can repair themselves in battle and weapons that become more powerful with use. We are no longer dependent on anyone else for our defense. Foster, now Supreme Admiral of all human military forces, gave the final report. Our former allies have kept to their agreements. They remain in their home systems and have made no attempts to contact us. The galaxy is at peace, but it is a peace based on human strength, not alien mercy. Thompson looked around the chamber at the representatives of humanity's new empire. They had come so far from the trusting species that had joined the Federation 2 centuries ago. The aliens taught us an important lesson when they betrayed us, she said. They showed us that in the end, every species stands alone. The strong survive, and the weak are consumed. She paused, thinking of all the humans who had died to learn this lesson. But they also taught us something else. When humanity stands alone, we are stronger than when we depend on others. We do not need allies who might betray us. We do not need friends who might abandon us. We need only ourselves, our courage, and our determination to never surrender. The chamber erupted in applause as Thompson delivered her final words. Every ally betrayed Earth, and humanity declared, "We stand alone." Today we stand alone by choice, not by circumstance. We are free, we are strong, and we are ready for whatever the galaxy sends our way. 10 years later, Admiral Foster stood on the bridge of a new ship, the USS Sovereign, as it patrolled the border of human space. A young officer asked her about the old days, before the betrayal. "Admiral, do you ever miss the Federation, when humanity had allies?" Foster looked out at the stars, thinking of old friends who had become enemies and enemies who had become the only allies worth having.